It was raining in Washington the night I found out. The kind of rain that doesn't cleanse. It lingers, whispering against windows, tracing cold patterns that look like veins across the glass. I remember standing there, holding my phone, watching his message flicker on the screen like a confession written in light. He thought he had hidden it well. He thought I wouldn't see, but I did. You don't really notice the end of love when it happens. It's not a sound. It's a silence that grows between words. For weeks I had felt it. His distance, the way his eyes flickered elsewhere, the pause before he said my name. Still, that night, as the storm pressed against the city, I felt something inside me fracture quietly, like a crack in porcelain that no one hears until it breaks completely. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched the message disappear as if deleting it would erase the truth. But the truth doesn't vanish. It waits, patient until you're ready to face it. He had another woman. The name didn't matter. The betrayal did. That night, I walked through our apartment, the place we built together, touching every surface as if saying goodbye. The city outside glowed in wet reflections. Washington felt smaller, colder. I stood by the window and watched the lights of passing cars blur into streaks, like memories sliding out of focus. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet. I was still learning what it meant to lose faith in someone you loved. The next morning, he came home smelling like rain and someone else's perfume. He smiled like nothing had changed, kissed my forehead, and told me I looked tired. I looked at him and thought, yes, I am, tired of pretending. Tired of carrying his lies like a secret I never asked for. But I smiled back. Just didn't sleep, I said. That was the first lie I told him after I found out. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next few weeks, I watched him unravel without realizing it. I became silence itself, steady, calm, unreadable. He mistook my quiet for peace, not realizing it was control. He thought he was winning freedom. What he didn't know was that I had already taken his. I stopped correcting his stories. When he lied about where he'd been, I nodded. When he said he had to work late, I wished him luck. When he forgot anniversaries or came home distracted, I just smiled and poured him wine. My restraint was his comfort and his trap. The first step in destroying someone is letting them believe they're safe. I began to shift small things, quietly, subtly. I introduced him to people who would question his reliability. I forwarded the wrong emails by accident. I praised him to his boss just enough to make expectations rise beyond what he could deliver. It wasn't about ruining his job. It was about making him crumble under the weight of his own pretenses. All the while, he thought he was in control. I let him. There were moments I almost faltered. Nights when he fell asleep beside me, breathing softly, and I felt the ghost of who we used to be tug at me. But then I'd remember the message, the perfume, the betrayal whispered into the dark, and my resolve would harden again. You can't unsee disloyalty. Once you know it, it stains everything. It took months. The cracks began small, missed deadlines, tension at work, distrust among friends. He became paranoid, snapping at people, blaming others. The more he tried to control his world, the more it slipped from his hands. I didn't push. I only watched, quietly guiding his fall like wind steering ashes. Sometimes he'd look at me across the dinner table, eyes searching. "You've been distant lately," he'd say. I'd tilt my head, give a faint smile. "Have I?" He'd stare a little longer, uncertain, as if trying to read something that wasn't there. That was the beauty of it. I'd become his mirror, showing him only what he projected. He started drinking more. The man who once ran marathons now came home late, restless, smelling of whiskey and exhaustion. The guilt was eating him, though he couldn't name it. People think guilt needs confession to exist. It doesn't. It festers in silence, in the spaces between words, in the look you give when someone asks if you're okay. One night, he came home and found me reading by the window. Rain again. It always seemed to rain when the truth was near. He sat beside me, shoulders slumped. "Do you ever feel like everything's falling apart?" I closed the book slowly, only when it needs to. He looked at me, confused, maybe even afraid. He didn't know I was speaking about him. Months passed. Washington turned from rain to frost. I kept my calm routine, work, home, quiet dinners. I wasn't cruel. I didn't yell or accuse. I simply withdrew the one thing he couldn't live without, my faith in him. He began losing friends. The woman he cheated with vanished from his life too. Perhaps she saw what I already knew. He was hollowing from the inside. His ambition crumbled. The more he tried to prove himself, the more transparent his desperation became. I remember the night he broke down. He came to me at 3 a.m, eyes red, hands trembling. "I don't know what's happening to me," he said. I looked at him for a long time before answering. "Maybe it's all catching up." He sank to the floor, sobbing. I didn't comfort him. I just watched, not out of cruelty but clarity. He was finally facing himself, stripped of illusion. I had waited for that moment, not to see him in pain, but to see him aware. By morning, he was gone. "Left for a few days," he said. "Needed space." I didn't stop him. I simply watched him walk away through the pale Washington dawn, the city still half asleep. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. When he came back, he was different, quiet, careful. He tried to apologize without words, flowers, dinners, small gestures. But it was too late. My silence had already rewritten the story between us. We lived together like strangers sharing a secret. Every smile was a performance, every touch an echo. I began planning my exit, not out of anger, but peace. Revenge isn't loud. It's a quiet restoration of balance. I had given him the rope, and he had hung himself with his own lies. Now I was free to walk away without guilt. I packed one suitcase, left a note that simply said, "You taught me silence." Then I left the keys on the counter and stepped out into the rain. Washington was gray, soft, endless. I walked without looking back, blending into the rhythm of the city. Behind me, a man who once believed he could outsmart love was learning that you can't cheat someone who no longer plays. Months later, I heard from mutual friends that he'd quit his job, sold the apartment, moved somewhere quieter. Some said he'd found faith again. Others said he was lost. It didn't matter. My story with him had ended the night I chose not to fight back. Sometimes, on rainy nights, I still stand by my window and watch the city blur beneath the storm. I think about how easy it is to destroy someone, not through violence, but through patience, through truth, through letting them be who they really are. Revenge isn't about breaking another person. It's about rebuilding yourself so beautifully that their memory can't survive it. And that's exactly what I did. I started writing again, painting, traveling alone. The silence that once trapped me became the space I breathed in. Every corner of Washington felt new, washed clean by the storms that once mirrored my grief. I saw him one last time, by chance at a cafe near the waterfront. He looked older, softer, like someone still searching for the life he lost. Our eyes met for a moment. He smiled, small and uncertain. I returned it, calm, kind. No hatred left. He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already walking away. Outside, the rain had started again, and for the first time, it didn't hurt.